Hi, everyone. If you can hear me, go ahead and go over to the chat button on the right side of the screen and click yes, or type yes. We'll get started in just a minute or two. We want to give everybody time to log in, get GoToWebinar up and running smoothly. Before we start, go ahead and head over to our Twitter account at twitter.com/recruitmilitary and check in for the webinar. Let us know what branch of the military you served in and what kind of job you're looking for now in the civilian world. Just tweet directly to our handle, @recruitmilitary. We'll give everyone just one more minute to get up and running smoothly, and then we'll begin the webinar. We'll give everyone just one more second, and then we're going to get started. I just want to give everyone a chance to log in. Sometimes GoToWebinar takes a second to get up and running. Can everyone see my screen? If you can see my screen, go ahead and type yes into the chat box. Okay, we're ready to start. Thanks for joining us today, and welcome to 7 Tips for Veterans to Get a Job Through a Career Fair. If you've already checked in via Twitter, welcome aboard. If you haven't, head over to twitter.com/recruitmilitary and let us know you're here. Our handle is @recruitmilitary. If you don't have a Twitter account, don't worry about it. Just let us know in the chat what branch of the military you served in and what kind of civilian job you are looking for today. My name is Liz Wheeler. I'm the social media manager here at Recruit Military. Joining me today for this webinar is Mike Frankum, former Army captain and senior vice president of marketing. We've put together a really great presentation for you based off of our experience with veteran job seekers, with companies who hire veterans, and with job fairs. I think you'll find the tips and advice helpful to you as you prepare to attend a job fair, whether it's your first time attending or whether you've attended many before without luck. Trying to change the slide here. While we're waiting for that to happen, we have a lot of experience in this area at Recruit Military. We've been hosting job fairs specifically for veterans for the past 8 years. We've hosted 560 events around the country. which 18,182 companies and organizations have attended, as well as 343,816 veterans. And we're asked a lot about how many of these veterans have found jobs, and we're proud to say that on average, as a result of each one of our job fairs, over 100 job offers are extended to veterans. That's for each event we hold. And this year, in 2014, we are hosting a total of 67 events, so you can do the math. Basically, our job fairs are pretty effective. You can visit events.recruitmilitary.com to find the job fair closest to you. We hold them in most major cities. Also, I encourage you to register in our resume database at www.recruitmilitary.com. It's another great resource you can utilize in your job search. It puts your skills and experience, both in the military and civilian workforce, in front of the eyes of employers who are looking for you. Why don't you go ahead and type events.recruitmilitary.com into your browser and bring it up so that we can make sure to cover questions you have about that web page. Okay. Based off of our experience with veteran job fairs, we've distilled what we found to be not the magic bullet by any stretch, but a list of effective tactics or guidelines that can help you land a job through a career fair to be on the receiving end of one or more of these 100 job offers per event. In just a second, I'm going to turn the reins over to Mike to discuss in detail these 7 tips. But I want to mention first that throughout the webinar, if you have questions or comments, please use the chat feature on the toolbar on the right side of the screen. We'll be monitoring all the comments throughout, and at the end, we'll have a question and answer session where we're happy to answer any questions you have. On that note, I'm going to introduce you to Mike Frankum, former Army captain and Senior VP of Marketing here at Recruit Military. Mike?
Thanks, Liz, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Before I get started, want to make sure that everyone can hear me, and again, if we could get a sound check and you just type in yes in your chat window to make sure that we've got good audio on my end, that would be great. All right, we've got a bunch of yeses coming in, so I appreciate that, everybody. And let's see here. Liz, if we could get back to tip 1, that'd be fantastic.
Is it showing up? Tip 1?
Nope, we've still got tip 2 on the screen here. There we go. All right.
There we go.
All right. Well, what we wanted to share with you, as Liz said, is our experience that we've developed since 2006 in holding career fairs across the nation. And we believe that there's 7 key tips that are going to help you prepare and do well at any career fair that might be on your radar. And we really encourage you to go to every career fair that you can in your local area, because it's going to give you a lot of practice and it's going to give you a lot of exposure to different companies and to different opportunities. And it's just going to hone your job-seeking skills, and it's practice that we all need, because finding a job isn't something that we do every day. And so just like you have done in the military to become the great soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines that you are, is you've had to train. So think of going to career fairs as a great training ground for you to become very effective at career transition. And one of the things that we start out with every time when we talk to folks about how to be effective at a career fair is to visit every booth that is there. You may ask, why would I do that if I believe that the company wouldn't have the type of position that I'm looking for? And that's exactly why we're saying that you should visit every booth, because it's likely that there might be positions in that company available that you're not aware of or that are not really being advertised. And it's through conversations and introductions that after every event we get feedback from candidates or veterans telling us that I went to that career fair, didn't ever hear of that particular company, but I struck up a conversation And I actually got hired by that company because I took your advice and I visited their booth and spoke with them, and they liked my background and they thought of me for a different position than they were really recruiting for as they were coming into the event. We refer to that as a little bit of career magic that can happen at an event. And so the key for you is to know in general what you're looking for, but keep an open mind to the companies that might have that position. And don't think that you've got it all figured out going in. Have that open mind to approach all the companies. And then also, as you approach the companies, we really encourage you to not go up to a company and simply say, I can do anything. And some of us are Superman, and some of us probably have done a little bit of everything in the military. But the perception you're going to give by doing that is that you don't really have direction and where you want to go with your career, and also that you haven't taken the time to really figure out what are your core strengths. And what the companies are going to try to figure out is, do you have what the skills are that I'm looking for? And by conveying your strengths and your interests to those companies, they're going to be able to better determine what that match is that might be there for you. I'm going to give you an example. In November, we had an Air Force non-commissioned officer waiting in line to talk with a major defense contractor. And he struck up a conversation with a recruiter from an educational institution while he was waiting in line for that defense contractor. And as he got up to the talking to the defense contractor, the person at the educational institution said, you know, if you're interested, I'd like you to come in for an interview. Let's schedule that for next week sometime. The Air Force non-commissioned officer said, sure, I'll do that. Went in and had a conversation the next week. And after a couple of hours of interviewing at the company, they made him an offer. And he's now started work in January, with his ETS date was in April. And so he was able to find that job before he was even transitioned. And a lot of it was a result of him being open to talking to everyone at that event. So just a little example of that career fair magic. So now that you understand the potential value of talking to everyone at the event, let's turn for a moment to your resume. So Liz, if we could move to the next tip. And tip number 2 is about the preparation of your resume and how to do that effectively. So Liz, would you care to touch on the first bullet there, because I know you get a lot of comments about that in our social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we hear a lot are when veterans attend our job fairs, they speak, they have great conversations with the recruiters, and then at the end they're asked to submit their application online. And this can frankly be a little off-putting if you've experienced this before, but we really think it's important to note that these companies are required by law to have their application process happen online. It is not personal. They send their recruiters to the job fairs anyway, even though their application is online, because they do value so highly that face-to-face interaction. So just be aware of that as you go through the process, that it is not because they don't value speaking to you in person. It's because that's how legally their process works.
Thanks, Liz. And one way that we've had some veterans successfully navigate this and stand out to veterans is that they've taken the time to visit the company websites prior to the event, and they've applied online to organizations that they know are going to be at the career fair, and then they print out the confirmation page that they've already applied to that particular position. They take that with them, hand that confirmation page with their resume then to the recruiter that's physically at the event, and now that recruiter's got a great impression because the individual has really had forethought before the event to do some research and express interest. And also the recruiter knows that you're in their system, so they can really begin to evaluate you because you have begun that evaluation process being online. So you've taken that step, and we've had some veterans successfully do this at events, so you might want to think about that as it relates to that topic. We oftentimes get questions about what should the length of a resume be, And we really encourage you to have it be 2 pages maximum. And you want those 2 pages to be filled with qualitative statements of accomplishment and achievement. And what I mean by that is specifically saying how you either improved operations, perhaps saved money, saved time, led to efficiency. So for example, a bullet might be through a process developed by my team, we decreased cost by 15% in our process. So it's very specific, and it gives a tangible piece of data that company can better understand what you've done and the impact it's had into the organization. And then the other thing that we'll touch on a little bit more here in a moment is the translation of your military experience into civilian terms. And in your resume, what that really means is try to think of the civilian terms, if you will, when it comes to your military experience, or if there aren't direct civilian terms for your military experience, describe what you did in terms that are not military. So keep out of there the acronyms, keep out of there the MOS, so that anyone who does read your resume can better understand what that experience has been that you've had in the military. So now that we've got your documentation ready to go and you've got a good resume, let's talk about the pitch that you're going to make to the to the companies that you're going to meet at the event. So Liz, number 3, please.
Is it going up?
Nope, not yet.
I think it's just lagging behind a little bit.
All right, there we go. So what we are encouraging you to do is to think about your 30-second elevator pitch. And if you've never heard of the elevator pitch, think of this as a 30-second commercial that you can use to engage others and let them know about who you are and what you're interested in. And oftentimes, it can help you also answer the tell me about yourself question that you might get in interviews. So you want to think about it as a perspective ability to convey to that person that you're meeting for the first time on what might match up with them as an organization. And you want to sell yourself and think about what the recruiters might want to hear. Now, they are going to want to hear about your impact that you've had in an organization and also be able to understand it. And sometimes that can be difficult. So you have to break it down oftentimes in more general terms. And I'm a former Army artillery guy, so I thought about an Army artillery fire direction chief and what he might say as a elevator pitch. And a fire direction chief, for those non-artillery guys out there, guys and gals out there, essentially what that person does is take data and make sure that the artillery rounds go from point A to point B and impact where they are intended to impact. So a fire direction chief might have as not even a 30-second elevator pitch, but as an elevator pitch, I've enjoyed the challenge of using data and precise operations to ensure that my team provided the highest levels of support to those units that we served. The fast pace and need for clear and effective communications fit my personality real well. I'm excited about my transition, and I look forward to joining a company where these skills can make a positive impact as a frontline leader. So notice, I'd had nothing about military jargon in there, didn't say I was a fire direction chief. I tried to figure out what I did as a fire direction chief, and that essentially is data, precise operations, effective communications, and team leadership. And then I tied that in at the end to the type of position that I'm looking for, a frontline leader. So that's an example of a 30-second elevator pitch where what you're attempting to do is provide that brief background of your skills, character qualities, and then apply that to the position that you're discussing. So very important as you're beginning to introduce yourself to others to have that at the ready. And also it's intended to have that you have that so that if you happen to meet that person in the elevator by chance and they say, what do you do? Or who are you? You might be able to answer with something that could maybe spark something because you just don't know who it is that you're going to be meeting out on the street. So your elevator pitch caught the attention now of the person that you're speaking to. Now you might need to go a little bit deeper, and that's where we talk about a little bit more your translation of your military experience in tip number 4. So Liz, if you could go to tip 4, please.
Should be showing up in just a second.
And just as a quick poll, if everybody in their chat box could answer just yes or no, and answer if you found this military translation has been challenging for you. If you found it to be challenging, please answer yes, and if not, answer no. And predominantly, we've got a bunch of yeses, a couple of no's, but overwhelmingly, we got a lot of yeses out there. So this is a challenge for everyone most of the time. Because sometimes what we did in the military doesn't seem to have a direct translation to civilian language. The first thing you need to be thinking about is to assume that the person you're speaking with doesn't understand MOS or military acronyms. And if you go into it that way and are thinking about that from the moment you're meeting someone, you're going to be more effective just from the start at how to best communicate with that individual. You want to explain the technical details, your responsibilities, and not just the role of your job within the military. And what I mean by that is that, let's take, for example, if you're involved in radio communications in the military, you don't want to use nomenclature about the particular equipment that you may be utilized, unless perhaps you're talking to maybe a defense contractor that specifically is going to support the military, and there's relevance in them knowing, and they would know the nomenclature of that equipment. But if it's just a general business, make sure that you use more general descriptions about what the equipment does and then what you did to both use and maintain it. So that means that you might need to do a little bit of research to determine the civilian equivalent to equipment so that that listener might understand. So if you're feeling challenged in this area about how to translate your military experience, I really encourage you to do a little bit of research and think about, like I did with the fire direction chief, what does he really do? What do I really do in that role and in that MOS? What am I dealing with? Am I dealing with data? Am I dealing with equipment? Am I dealing with networks if I'm in the IT world? Am I dealing with software? And then break it down into the civilian terminology. And if you happen to not know the civilian terminology, do a little bit of research. There's tons of it out there that will be able to help you make that transition. And even though it can get to be hard work, the value you're going to achieve out of this is that you're just going to come to know yourself a lot better and your experience a whole lot better as well. So take the time to find how to best translate that experience into the civilian language. So in addition to the skills, we know that the physical presentation you make is important as well. So Liz, can you move on to tip number 5, please? And Liz, why don't you take a moment to touch on some of these points for everybody.
Okay, tip number 5 just involves the general presentation at a job fair. I know that sometimes walking into a new situation like that can be a little overwhelming, but as long as you keep your military bearing, act professionally and confidently, that's the most important part. And like I said, this may be new, but you're adaptable. Your time in the military has taught you that, so act like it. You want to wear business clothes like you would to an interview. You want to make eye contact. You want to initiate handshakes. Don't be afraid to walk up to introduce yourself to a recruiter who's standing behind their booth by themselves. Be proactive and be confident, and it makes a very big difference. You'll make so many network connections being proactive and being confident, and you're definitely qualified to do so.
Thanks, Liz. And I just wanted to touch on the business clothes real quick because we oftentimes get questions about that and the attire. And it's always great if you can wear business attire, meaning a coat and tie. But if you happen to not have that yet, you know, a pair of nice khakis and a button shirt can certainly be sufficient at a career fair. So don't think that just because you haven't gotten a suit yet that you shouldn't go to a career fair. You know, put on a pair of khakis and a button shirt and make sure your shoes look good that you're going to wear, and you'll be just fine. And it's more important to get you out there in front of the companies than it is to worry about the fact that you might not have a suit yet, or maybe your suit isn't back from the tailor yet. Still get out and get in front of these companies so that you're speaking with them. And the other thing as you continue on in your interview process with companies is, you know, make sure you understand the typical attire for the types of positions that you are interested in. For instance, if you're interested in the banking industry, that's a very professional industry most of the time. You probably should be wearing a coat and tie. If your interests lie in the field service area, for example, it may be completely appropriate at a career fair to be dressed in that khaki and button shirts, because you know that when you're out in the field in field service, you're most likely wearing steel-toe boots and maybe some sort of uniform that the company has. So you also want to think about the type of position that you're going into when it comes to attire. So in addition to looking good, being prepared in other ways we've also found is important for success at a career fair. So Liz, if you could go to tip 6, please.
Yeah, but before we do that really quick, I just want to answer Anne-Marie's question. She asked about professional attire for women, and I think the same general principles apply to that. You probably want to wear a business skirt and a suit jacket if you have one. Professional pumps. If you don't have a suit jacket yet, that's fine. Just wear a nice skirt and a nice button shirt. It's really about the presentation more than about the article of clothes. You can handle yourself like you know what you're doing, and just that you will fit into the professional world. So in the practical sense, like I said, I would go with short pumps and a business skirt and either a button shirt or a suit jacket.
Great,
I hope,
great point.
And now we'll move on to tip 6.
All right, so tip 6. Make sure you're taking some time to research beforehand. You know, I already mentioned how to potentially work through the what some have as a challenge when it comes to applying to certain companies and going on and looking at positions and applying before the event. But you can typically, for most organizations that hold career fairs, know which companies are going to be attending that career fair because they typically have it posted somewhere online related to that event. And as you can see here, for our events, for example, we've got an exhibitor page that lists the exhibitors that are going to be attending the event. And you can even see there, for example, that next to waste management, you could even click on that 932 jobs on a job board, and that's actually going to take you to the jobs that Waste Management has posted on the recruitmilitary.com website. So different organizations are going to have different levels of information for you, but typically you can at least come to understand who the companies are that are going to be attending. You want to, when you're looking at that, you want to think about and evaluate, do they have jobs that are interesting to me, and know which ones they are so that when you go talk to the recruiter at the event, you can specifically mention and reference those particular jobs. Also, as you get ready to attend a career fair, be a little bit familiar with how a job fair works. You know, you're going to walk into a big room most of the time in a career fair, and it's going to be filled with hundreds of veterans, and it's going to be filled, you know, with anywhere from 40 to 80 different companies that are there recruiting. It can be a little overwhelming the first time you walk into that room, and the best way I've heard it described is you're going to have probably a top 5 or 10 companies that you want to talk to because you're particularly interested in them. Don't start with those companies. Get the butterflies out of your system and go talk to the other companies that may actually produce surprises for you because they might have those positions that are hidden. But at the same time, you'll get the butterflies out of your system. You'll get relaxed. You'll understand how people are interacting with the employers. And you'll get a sense for the flow, and you'll get better at even your delivery of who you are and what you bring to an organization. And so take that opportunity when you first get there to talk to a couple of companies that perhaps you didn't have at the top of your personal list, so that you are getting through the nerves and are ready to rock and roll on those companies that you specifically targeted. The other thing is come prepared with printed resumes, and if possible, tailor them to each type of job or industry that you're interested in. You might be someone that could do both a sales position and an operations leader position and have interest in both, and that's great, but it would be most effective if you could deliver a resume that was tailored for sales to the company that's looking for salespeople, and to the company that's looking for operational leaders, have a resume that speaks more about leadership. I know that sounds like it can take a little bit of time, but it can really make the difference in making sure that you're speaking the language of the employer. That's what you're trying to do here in getting a career, guys, is you're trying to speak the language of the employer. And you do that by making sure you understand what they're looking for, and then both communicate that in a written form on the resume and then also in the spoken form when you're talking to them. So a final piece after your masterful event performance at a career fair is, what do you do after the event? And tip 7 that we have is to make sure that you follow up. Now, to follow up effectively, you'll need to gather as much information and as many business cards as you can at the event of those individuals you spoke to. And make sure that you send an email thanking the recruiters for speaking with you, and then expressing interest in the job. And also, as you go through the career fair, we encourage you to take notes as you walk from employer to employer. And perhaps there was something very meaningful you learned as you talked with ABC company, and you want to make sure that you're referencing that in your follow-up note. I'd even encourage you, if you get a business card that has a mailing address and you just are super excited about an employer, take the time to jot a handwritten card or note. Let them know you appreciate them being at the event, and that you really hope to have the opportunity to speak with them further in their evaluation process. If you don't get business cards, because not everyone will be handing those out, another way is to make sure you capture the name of people and then look for them in social media and potentially reach out via LinkedIn. Now, I want to caution you here when it relates to LinkedIn. A few things to do. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile looks good before you start reaching out on LinkedIn. You want to have it look professional, be filled with good information about yourself, not have spelling and grammar errors within it. And also very important on LinkedIn, in my opinion, is to have a picture. Don't leave your profile empty without a picture. Once you've got your LinkedIn profile looking good, at least in a basic form, as you reach out to people, make sure you don't do it in a generic way. LinkedIn makes it easy for you to just invite people and say that you'd like to connect with them. But it's going to be more meaningful if you take the 60 seconds to jot out a personal sentence or two, referencing you're meeting them at a career fair, and even if you don't have the opportunity to work for them, you'd like to include them in your growing professional network. It's, again, a great personal way, and I'll say that most of the people who are recruiters, if you take that 60 seconds to do a very personal approach to an introduction like that, they will accept your invitation to connect. If you don't take the time, though, to do that, you don't have a picture on your profile, they may not accept your invitation to connect, because the impression you're giving is that you haven't been interested enough to take the time to present yourself professionally, and so they're not going to accept the invitation to connect. There's many out there that would take that approach. So make sure you do that follow-up after the event. Really important, especially for those companies you really have an interest in, or maybe really struck up some great conversations with at an event. So we know, based on our experience, that career fairs can be a powerful tool for the job seeker. And in summary, these 7 tips, though there's a lot of things underlying these 7 tips, can really help you get value out of attending an event. So again, make sure you visit every booth. You just don't know what might be hidden there that's just right for you. Prepare your resume. Make sure that there aren't spelling errors, there's not grammar errors, that you also have the military jargon and the acronyms stripped from it as much as possible so that anybody can really understand that resume. Encourage you to think about that 30-second elevator pitch so that you can get someone excited to learn more about you. Translate that military experience into civilian language as much as you possibly can. And then make sure that you're presenting yourself well. Dress and act professionally and confidently. The bottom line to everyone on this call is you've done a great thing in serving our country, and you should go out confidently to anything, any part of your career search, and know that you can get the job done. So portray that in what you're doing. Research companies beforehand, and then lastly, make sure you do the follow-up that is necessary after an event. Liz, back to you.
Okay, we'll start the question and answer session in just a second. I want to thank you, Mike, for going through those 7 tips. Before we start the question and answer session, be sure to check out our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and our website at www.recruitmilitary.com. We have a schedule of events that we host around the country at events.recruitmilitary.com. So go ahead and type that URL into your browser to make sure it works. Again, it's events.recruitmilitary.com in case you have any questions about the page. And once you've done that, type OK into the chat box, and afterwards we'll question and answer. I'll give you just a second to bring that up. All right, looks like people are opening it up. All right. Okay, now for the question and answer. On the right side of the page, as you've already utilized, you can expand the GoToMeeting toolbar by clicking the orange arrow at the top. And once it's opened, you should see a box for comments and questions. You can submit your comments and questions there. I believe Mike and I are the only ones who can see who's asking which question, so don't be shy about asking. And we'll go ahead and take them now. So submit your questions. Okay, these are some great questions. This one is from Jason. Can I get this webinar emailed to me? Yes, you can. Just send me an email at lwheeler@recruitmilitary.com. We should have this available pretty soon up on SlideShare, and I will post a link to that on our social networks once it's posted. But if you want it directly after, just send me an email. The address, again, is lwheeler@recruitmilitary.com. Mike, this is a great question for you from Stephanie. She asks, how do we address awards and decorations on our resumes and on LinkedIn?
Well, the one thing that on the resumes and on LinkedIn is that you're back to the same challenge of people maybe not understanding the awards. So I wouldn't necessarily try to list every single award on a resume because some of you have a chest full of awards now, and you've done great things. So what you want to do is actually weave in your awards into the jobs that you've actually done, and so that you can relate the award to something you specifically did in a position. Most of the time, you got the award maybe for overall performance, but think about the 1 or 2 things that really stood out for you to likely win that award, and then tie it to the performance of a particular job. That way it will be more meaningful to the employer, and they won't have to wonder what, let's say, an Army Commendation Medal is. To someone who never served before, that doesn't mean anything, and maybe even to an Air Force veteran, an Army Commendation Medal doesn't mean anything if it happens to be an Air Force veteran that you're speaking with. So you want to tie the awards to positions, and that makes it more meaningful then to the employer, and it's also allowing you to better show where you've had that positive impact in an organization.
Okay, thanks, Mike. This is another great question from Richard. He asked, 55 years old, and for me it seems like age is a factor. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, we do hear this, Richard, and you know, unfortunately there may be some of that out there from time to time. But what we have seen is that for the folks who go to our events, and even outside of our events, but when they go there and they follow some of the tips that we had, and they're able to really communicate effectively what they've done and the value that they bring, they oftentimes can overcome a lot that might be there perception-wise. Another thing that, and I'm even in this boat at 46 years old, is sometimes the perception might be that I'm not as up on technology. So you may want to do some things that kind of publicly show that you're tuned in and tied into technology and the way things are today and the way the business world is evolving. And the other element is that this goes for anyone who I would say has anything challenging in their background. You know, perhaps, you know, we all make mistakes in life, and perhaps you have something that's particularly challenging in your background, and you feel like it's awfully difficult to overcome, is that you might find that your best shot is to connect on a very personal level with folks that are in sometimes small to medium-sized businesses, because they're likely going to have more of a say in maybe taking what in other organizations might be considered a chance. They're oftentimes going to be in ownership or, you know, have some sort of equity almost in the business, and that opens them up to, you know, making decisions that maybe other people might feel is too much risk. And that's not to say that, you know, the other organization won't look at you. It's just the small and medium-sized business, you might have a better chance at speaking directly with those who are in that, you know, that ownership type role, and can really get into a personal type communication with them, and that can be a great way to bridge some of those challenges.
Okay, and this question is from Jennifer. She says, I have been selected for a position and I've just started my transitioning process. My potential employer will pay for my licensing, and by the time I retire in the next 12 months, I will seamlessly transition into my new position. Important is it for me to still attend job fairs?
Well, if you've got, it sounds like in that case you have a pretty good thing going, and that, you know, it sounds like everything would be on track. You know, I would say, though, that if it's a year away, the one thing we all know is the world can change overnight. So going to, you know, a couple of career fairs here and there to hone your skills and to just be able to tell the story of who you are probably would not be a bad thing to do, and probably just be benefit you in being able to communicate your experiences, even for the new company that you're about to join in a year from now after getting your certifications. It will even help prepare you for the communications you need to have to grow and get promoted within that new company. So there's relevance just to going to career fairs to get more comfortable with talking about yourself and your experiences and the value that you bring to organizations.
Okay, and this question is from Jason. He says, 38 years old, but I was medically retired at 90%. Should I be open about this, or would it be best not to put this on the application?
You know, Jason, that's a definitely tough question, because it can be quite dependent. You know, most of the time what we are seeing is that organizations are becoming much more knowledgeable about what you know, what that disability rating means. And the other thing is that only you are going to know if the disability you have is going to hinder you in any way in that particular job. And I would say that if you know that it is not going to hinder you and that the particular disability you have does not affect your ability to do the job that is stated in any way, shape, or form, or that it could not be achieved with some accommodation by the company. Again, more and more companies are understanding how to do this effectively, that it does not hurt when you feel fairly confident to talk about that in your interview process. I would say that it would only bring out perhaps in many cases, a truthfulness in who you are as you go through the interview process. But I would also say that in your self-evaluation, if your disability is such that it could potentially hinder you in any way, then it's really, incumbent upon you to make sure that you understand what it would take to overcome that, and make sure, again, that you are being honest with your employer, because what you'd hate to have is kind of try to hide things and then have challenges develop after the fact, and then that just leads to challenges across the board that might have been avoided with positive upfront communication. And then lastly, I believe it was Jason, I'd encourage you to reach out to some of the organizations that are out there, like the DAV, and speak with them, get some guidance from those organizations that are out there that specifically have expertise in working individuals like yourself who might have had a disability develop during their service. So I really encourage you to take those kind of steps as well, so that you're very well informed and you know from experts in that area, number one, all of your rights, and then number two, sort of some of the norms of behavior and what you should consider, because each person is even going to have unique disabilities, but it's through their experience that they have in years and years of working with it that they're going to be able to best guide you to your unique situation.
Oh, this is a great question from Robert. He asks, how do you overcome education versus experience for positions listing a degree as a requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, a career fair is a great place to potentially overcome that. It is a challenging thing to overcome on just a normal internet application. If the job says that a degree is required, it's going to be difficult to overcome that in kind of an online application process. But in a career fair, what that allows you to do is have that two-way communication with the employer. And I kind of take the approach of when you're speaking with someone and you've done the research beforehand and you're looking at jobs that they have, and a particular one that's posted is listed and it fits what you're looking for and it fits your experience, but it has that degree requirement and you maybe don't have your degree yet, then I'd encourage you to go have just a straightforward conversation with the recruiters that would be at an event. Ask them questions about the position. You might ask them questions related to, I did research, I'm excited about your company. This position is exciting because it directly relates to what I did in my last job or in the service, and I'd really love to continue to do that. And in your job description, you have a requirement for a degree. I don't have that completed yet. Do you have any consideration for a depth of experience versus a degree? And a time frame perhaps when I might be able to work on my degree while I'm employed. That's the power of a career fair, is to be able to ask those types of things so that you can get the better information. When it comes to that topic, the more direct one-to-one you can be with someone in that organization, the better opportunity you're going to have to overcome what oftentimes is just a bullet inserted into a job description, but can be overcome if you really have a lot of very relevant experience. And then, like any requirement in a job, it's important to remember that from time to time, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about a degree or a particular experience that a company lists that they want, and you have 3 of the 4 required things that they say, and you decide you want to apply anyway and you don't hear anything, you know, that's just going to happen, and you just need to roll on to the next employer. But going and talking with people specifically to the education piece is one way that you can work through that with different employers.
All right, well, we're out of time to wrap up the Q&A. We want to thank you for joining us today. We will be hosting more of these webinars in the future, so let us know what you think, what you would like to hear more about, and whether this was helpful to you. In the meantime, best of luck at our job fairs, and be sure to register and create a profile at www.recruitmilitary.com. Employers search there all the time for candidates to fill their positions. You want to make sure to put yourself in front of them. Also, be sure to connect with Mike and me on LinkedIn and with Recruit Military on Facebook and on our website. And again, thank you all for joining. Have a great day.